Hey everyone, welcome back to Living Beyond the Invisible, A Walk with Heather, the podcast that sheds light on the realities of living with invisible disabilities. I'm your host Heather, and this week's episode is called The Invisible Weight. Before we dive in, I want to put the disclaimer out there that I'm not a medical professional. I'm just someone who lives with invisible disabilities and wants to share what I've learned through personal experience and research. This podcast is meant to inform, encourage, and connect, but it's not a substitute for professional medical advice. If you're facing health concerns, please reach out to a qualified healthcare provider. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that doesn't get nearly enough attention: how living with invisible disabilities impacts our mental health. By now, you should know that when I talk about invisible disabilities, I'm referring to conditions like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, autoimmune disorders, heart disease, and neurological disorders, just to name a few. These are illnesses you can't always see, but they affect nearly every part of our lives. Today's episode is going to explore the emotional and mental health toll of these conditions, and we're not just scratching the surface, we're going in, all in. Here's how we'll break it down. We're going to talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD, loneliness and isolation, and finally, imposter syndrome. Each of these mental health challenges shows up in different ways, but they're often interconnected, and they can be made worse by being misunderstood, dismissed, or even gaslit because your illness is invisible. We're also going to look at some eye-opening statistics, and I'm going to share my personal story with you about my mental health journey. So if you're someone living with an invisible illness or love someone who is, this episode is for you. Let's get started. All right, let's begin with one of the most common and least talked about companions to invisible illness, and that's depression. Depression isn't just about feeling sad. It's a deep, persistent weight that can affect everything from motivation and memory to relationships and self-worth. For many people with invisible disabilities, depression is a byproduct of daily pain, fatigue, and frustration. You wake up already exhausted. You have to cancel plans again because your body just won't cooperate. People stop inviting you. You start wondering if it's your fault. Here's a statistic from 2021 that was a study published in the Journal of Affective Disorders. It found that individuals with chronic illnesses are 2 to 3 times more likely to experience depression than the general population. In fact, the National Institutes of Health estimates that about 33% of people with serious medical conditions experience symptoms of depression. And here's the real kicker. Because your illness isn't visible, others may assume you're just fine. They say things like, "But you look so good. You don't look sick." And over time, you start to question your own reality. This gaslighting, intentional or not, can lead to internalized shame and guilt, which only worsens depressive symptoms. So what helps with depression? 1, building a community that you can trust, a community of people who are in similar situations to you. Therapy or medication can also help. And gentle, consistent validation. Sometimes it's simply as simple as saying, I believe you. Now let's talk about anxiety. For many of us living with invisible disabilities, anxiety becomes a full-time job. We're anxious about symptoms, about whether today's pain will derail plans or whether people will believe us if we have to cancel. Then there's also medical anxiety, worrying about new tests, new doctors, new meds. Then we have to worry about, is that pain regular, normal pain, or is it something I should be worried about? And if you have something that can flare up or reoccur, you worry about that as well. So let's be real. Being medically vulnerable and repeatedly dismissed can create a form of hypervigilance. Trust me, I know. According to the Anxiety and Depression Association of America, about 40% of individuals with chronic illness experience clinically significant anxiety. And a survey from the Mental Health Foundation in the UK found that nearly 1 in 2 people living with chronic conditions feel anxious most days. That is nearly 1 in 2 people, meaning nearly half of all people feel anxious most days. It's exhausting to constantly scan your body for symptoms and simultaneously scan your environment for judgment or misunderstanding. It can honestly feel like you're walking a tightrope with absolutely no safety net. And the worst part about it, anxiety can actually amplify your physical symptoms, creating a very vicious cycle that just keeps repeating. So what can break that cycle? Well, grounding techniques can help. Doing some mindfulness exercises, having a place that is a safe space for you when you're anxious, finding doctors who listen, medication when needed, and talking about it, kind of like we're doing right now. All of those things can help. Let's switch gears and let's talk about something we don't hear enough about, and that's PTSD. Now, I'm not talking about PTSD just from trauma like veterans get. That is serious. I am not making light of that. Please don't think that. But I'm not talking about trauma in the traditional sense, but medical PTSD. Many roll their eyes when you tell them you have medical PTSD. But guys, it's very real. You may be wondering what exactly medical PTSD is, and well, I'm glad you asked. While there are many reasons a person may develop medical PTSD, in the case of invisible disabilities, it's the result of repeated medical trauma, being misdiagnosed, dismissed, told it's all in your head. It's the invasive procedures, painful treatments, emergency rooms, and hearing one more specialist say, I'm not sure what's wrong. According to a 2022 study in General Hospital Psychiatry, up to 30% of patients with chronic illness may show signs of PTSD related to their medical experiences. Think about that, almost 1 in 3. And I am 1 in 3, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. PTSD can manifest as nightmares, avoidance of medical care, panic attacks, or even emotional numbness. You may dread doctor visits to the point of physical illness. And when you do go, you're rehearsing what to say, fearing judgment. It's not just what happened to us. It's the feeling of powerlessness that sticks. Healing from medical PTSD isn't always a straight path, but it is possible. Trauma-informed therapy, EMDR, peer support, and having one validating healthcare provider can make a huge difference. If you're experiencing medical PTSD, please know your trauma is real and you're not alone. All right, let's move on to something that most people have no idea those of us with invisible disabilities even battle, and that is loneliness. All right, let's move on to something that most people have no idea we even battle, and that's loneliness. Living with a chronic illness or multiple chronic illnesses can be very isolating. When you can't go to social events or you have to leave early, maybe you need more rest than others. Those invites usually stop. Friendships usually fade away. And your family, they don't always get it. Those things are frustrating and so very isolating. But people typically just don't get it, and they probably never will if they don't live with it. Add on to that, when your disability is invisible, that isolation can feel even deeper because people assume you're doing better than you are because, again, you don't look sick. Honestly, I really wish people would realize that looks can be deceiving and not everyone who is sick looks it. Anyway, a 2020 study from the CDC found that people with disabilities are more than twice as likely to report frequent mental distress, and a major factor is social isolation. Loneliness isn't just emotional, it's biological. Prolonged isolation affects immune health, heart health, even brain function. It literally hurts. But connection doesn't have to mean a crowded room or being constantly available. It can be finding one person who gets it. It can be joining an online support group. Even following an advocate on social media who makes you feel seen can help you feel less alone. Remember, you are not a burden. You deserve community, even if it looks different from what you imagined. And I am always just one message or email away if you need to talk. All right, we're going to move on to our last mental health challenge, imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome? Well, it's that little voice in your head that says, am I exaggerating? Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not really sick. Other people have it worse. I should suck it up. Or the worst one, what if it really is all in my head? Any of that sound familiar? I know it sounds familiar to me, and I've had each and every one of those thoughts at one point or another. I still do, if I'm being honest. Imposter syndrome thrives in the silence surrounding invisible disabilities. When the world questions your reality, it's easy to start questioning yourself. A paper in Disability and Rehabilitation reported that up to 60% of people with invisible disabilities experience imposter syndrome related to their health. It's one of the leading contributors to depression and low self-worth among chronic illness communities. We internalize doubt. We compare. We try to push through to prove we're not lazy or weak, sometimes to our own detriment. But here's the truth. If you're showing up every day with pain, fatigue, brain fog, or any invisible challenge, you're not faking it. You're fighting. Let's normalize self-trust. Let's affirm our own reality. You don't need someone else's permission to honor your experience. Your feelings are valid, even if others don't believe them. All right, now that I have talked about all of the mental health challenges that we face with invisible disabilities, this is where I'm going to share my story with you. As you likely know by now, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, or if you've followed me on social media, I was born with tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia, which is truthfully made up of a few different congenital heart defects. My childhood was rough because of this. Many stays in and out of the hospital, surgeries, doctor's appointments, tests, etc., etc. You get the picture. Then when I was 16, I had what was to be my third open heart surgery. We were told it went well and I'd be able to go home in a few days. 5 days later, on the day that I was supposed to go home, I was rushed back into the OR for my fourth open heart surgery. I had fluid buildup around my heart and a blood clot behind my heart. Had they not caught that, had my cardiologist not taken one look at me and insisted I have an echo immediately, I would not have survived the night. And honestly, they weren't sure I was going to survive the surgery in general. But by the grace of God, I survived and I'm here to tell the tale. Truthfully, this is likely when my medical PTSD really kicked in. Sure, I had some anxiety and depression before that, but it was this event that caused the nightmares, the flashbacks, the panic attacks, in fear of having a procedure or surgery in February. That last one might seem weird to most people, but I will not have any type of procedure in February if I can absolutely help it. January 31st or March 1st, and I'm okay with it. But from February 1st to February 28th or 29th on leap year, not happening unless it's life or death. I've been laughed at for this so many times, but honestly, I don't care. Now, that might have been the start of my PTSD, but it certainly wasn't the only thing that has caused it to worsen. Over the years, I've added several diagnoses to my medical history: scoliosis, osteoarthritis, osteopenia, and fibromyalgia. I'm also a breast cancer survivor, which of course caused major PTSD episodes on their own. But I learned to live with my CHD. I could manage my PTSD symptoms pretty well until I began showing signs of fibromyalgia. I couldn't get any of my doctors to believe me about my pain, brain fog, or any other symptom I had. They would make excuses, blame it on hormones, or even just blame it on my CHD. It was exhausting and took me a very long time to get an official diagnosis for fibromyalgia. That all took a major toll on my mental health. I struggle with everything we've talked about today, but loneliness and depression are the worst too. To be honest, this is hard to talk about, but I know it's very important to do so, so I'm sharing my story. My depression gets so bad that I often think the world would be better off without me in it, that I would be better off if I just ended things. Logically, I know those things aren't true. But depression is a beast, and it plays tricks on your mind. I've struggled with depression for most of my life, but these last few years have been some of the darkest times I've ever faced. My cancer diagnosis changed my life, as I'm sure it does for anyone who gets that call. But most people with my type of cancer heal and can then move on with their lives. Unfortunately for me, my cancer and the following treatments caused my fibro to get worse. Actually, it caused everything to get worse. I've only worked about 3 months out of the last 26 months because my body just can't handle the strain of working even part-time. And before my cancer treatment, I was working full-time. Yeah, I struggled because of the pain, but I was able to manage it just fine. Now, like I said, I've only worked 3 months out of the last 26, and that makes me feel very worthless. Guys, I'm struggling daily to keep my depression in check, and I feel so isolated all of the time. Speaking of isolation, that isolation leads to loneliness, which leads to a deeper depression. My Facebook page is growing, and I'm making some connections through that with some absolutely wonderful people. I have 2 friends who seem to really get it. I won't name them, but I'm sure they'll both know who they are if they listen to this. Then I have my family. But to be honest, I'm not really sure how much my family gets it, like really gets it. Most of my friends have disappeared. I rarely hear from them, and I've mostly stopped being invited to things. I feel like I have absolutely nothing or nobody to turn to when I need them. The loneliness is exhausting. Trying to battle depression is exhausting. The anxiety is exhausting. The negative thoughts from imposter syndrome are exhausting. It's all just so dang exhausting. It truly makes me just want to give up sometimes. But giving up isn't an option. I have to keep fighting, keep pushing, keep living in constant pain. And the sad part? I know I'm not alone in my feelings. I know that there is an entire community, an entire world out there that is fighting the same feelings that I have on a daily basis. Before we close, I want to talk directly to anyone listening who might not be living with an invisible disability, but loves someone who is, or just wants to help someone who is. You might be wondering, what can I do? How can I help? The truth is, your role can be powerful. Even small gestures make a huge difference. I've talked about this before, and I've mentioned these things in previous episodes, but I feel that they bear repeating. So here are some meaningful ways you can support someone facing both invisible illness and the mental health challenges that come with it. Believe them. Start here and never underestimate the power of these words. I believe you. When someone's illness isn't visible, they're often met with skepticism, even from loved ones. Your belief is the foundation of their safety. Number 2, listen without fixing. You don't have to have answers. Heck, I don't have answers. Sometimes the best thing you can do is sit with them in their pain. Say, that sounds really hard, but I'm here for you. Just being present can help ease that loneliness. Number 3, educate yourself. Take some time to learn about their condition. Google it, read stories, watch documentaries. This shows that you care and reduces the emotional burden they carry from always having to explain themselves. Number 4, respect boundaries. Invisible disabilities are very unpredictable. Plans are going to change. They might cancel at the last minute, or they might need space. Instead of taking it personally, offer them some grace, saying, no worries, I'm here when you're ready, and mean it, can be incredibly healing. Number 5, check in regularly. A simple message like thinking of you or how's today going can break through isolation. Even if they don't always reply, knowing that someone cares matters. Number 6, be their advocate. If you're in a workplace or in a family or you have a friend group where someone is being doubted or dismissed, use your own voice. Advocate for accessibility. Call out the stigma. Sometimes those of us with invisible illnesses are just too dang tired to fight every single battle that's put in front of us. And number 7, normalize mental health support. Encourage therapy. Be open about your own mental health issues. Let them know that seeking help is not weakness, it's strength. And finally, show up with love, not pity. People with invisible disabilities are some of the most resilient, insightful humans you'll ever meet. They're not broken. They're navigating a reality that's just harder to see. Your presence, your compassion, and your willingness to walk beside them, that can be life-changing. So there you have it. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, loneliness, imposter syndrome. All deeply human and all part of the invisible weight we carry when we live with invisible disabilities. But here's the thing, we are not alone and we are not broken. Our mental health deserves care, compassion, and visibility, just as much as our physical health. Thank you so much for joining me today on Living Beyond the Invisible, A Walk with Heather. If you'd like to connect or learn more about the podcast, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Living Beyond the Invisible, A Walk with Heather. I'll have those linked along with resources and references from today's episode in the show notes. I'm Heather, and until next time, take care of yourself and always remember some of the bravest battles we fight are the ones no one else can see.